All right, guys, it's Jahlon. And as you know, during my Twitch shows, a lot of times we'll jump down a rabbit hole. We'll start talking about real life. We'll start talking about politics or sociology. And sometimes I talk about stuff that I have to get ready on the fly. Last week I did this segment. A lot of people reached out to me and said I should put this together as a video. So here we go. I want to talk about the United States, and I want to talk about this continuous drum beating that we need a $15 minimum wage. The person leading this charge here is Bernie Sanders. A $15 minimum wage is not a radical idea. What's radical is the fact that millions of Americans are forced to work for starvation wages, while 650 billionaires became over 1 trillion richer during a global pandemic. Yes, we must raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Now, this is absolutely a great soundbite. It's absolutely a great opinion. The only problem here is this is trying to jam together facts that aren't relevant. The biggest fact is those 650 billionaires do not employ 100% of the workforce. The problem with Bernie Sanders and the problem with everybody talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 is they do not factor, number one, the impact that will have on small businesses. Number two, raising the minimum wage may not be the best decision. There may be a better decision, at least for the short term. Absolutely something that the US government could get done. So as we jump in here, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the fact that the living wage, everybody wants the living wage to be $15. They want the minimum wage. Well, right now, what we're working with is a federal minimum wage of $7.25. You are trying to more than double the minimum wage without much thought into what is that going to do to the economy. But let's just look at a minimum wage of $7.25. You have a 40-hour work week in a full-time week, and I understand part of the problem here is lots of people don't get 40 hours a week because then they have to get benefits, but we're going to keep this one simple and just on the wages. You got 52 work weeks in a full-time year, which means there are 2,080 hours in a full-time work year. When you times that out by $7.25 an hour, the minimum wage in the United States is $15,080 a year. However, the problem is that although we say the minimum that we're going to pay is $15,080 a year, we have a poverty line that is $12,880. But the IRS standard deduction during tax season is only $12,550. So Bernie Sanders, all of the politicians, somebody in Congress, explain this one to the American people. How is the poverty line not set at what the minimum wage job will provide? And even better than that, why is the standard deduction on taxes less than the poverty line? So basically what we have here is we have a system that you're not going to make enough to when we say you're out of poverty, you're working a minimum wage job and you're out of poverty. So the question becomes, why are we raising the minimum wage if the current minimum wage takes you out of poverty? And then the question becomes, why do we tax the poor? Why do we tax people back into poverty? Because if the poverty line is $12,880 and the standard deduction is $12,550, you're going to see in a minute, you're taxing people back into poverty. So let's take a look here. What you have is these two numbers should match and always match. Before I hear another thing about the minimum wage being raised to $15, this is an easy fix for Congress. Whatever we set the poverty line at is what the IRS standard deduction will be at. Let's make that happen in a clean bill. No pork, no filibusters. Just let's raise it. So you want to talk about the minimum wage being $15 an hour? Sure. Same scenario as before, 40-hour work week, 52 work weeks, 2,080 work hours in a year. This is suddenly going to jump minimum wage to $31,200 a year. This would become the new full-time minimum wage. Well, what is this going to do? What is this going to do to businesses? Under the old system, a $15,080 a year employee costs more than $15,080 a year because the business is already paying $934.96 in Social Security, which means the total cost for a full-time employee is actually $16,014. And this doesn't even start talking about things like unemployment insurance that some states require, medical insurance, 401k matching. Now, yes, absolutely, guys. I do want to say it. I don't believe that a lot of these companies that are paying people minimum wage are doing 401ks or providing benefits. Some of the reason why is because they can't. When we jump in here and we look at the new rate of pay, the new rate of pay of $31,200, businesses would need to find an extra $16,120 per employee, on top of the fact that they would need to find an extra $999 in order to pay that person's Social Security, the employer fair share of Social Security. That means it is a total of $17,120 more per full-time employee. Now, it's great for Congress, Bernie Sanders, the Democrats, for everybody to turn around and say, we need to pay a living wage. Where is the mom and pop shop going to find $17,120 to pay that full-time employee? Those businesses are going to fold because they simply won't be able to pay the new minimum wage. As we take a look in this, that really becomes the crux of this conversation. Why are we putting the burden on business owners until the government does the bare minimum that they could do to help make people able to claw themselves out of poverty? If we're going to set the new target minimum wage at $31,200, then the target poverty line must become $31,200. Because after all, you keep saying a living wage and people need to be earning a living. Well, we don't want people living in poverty. So therefore, the target poverty line is now the minimum wage of $31,200. But then the IRS standard deduction needs to be $31,200. Let's not tax people into poverty. Here, let me say that again because a lot of the Congress people don't understand this. Let's not tax people into poverty. There are so many taxes in the world. I'm not even going to talk about all the taxes that an American pays. We're just going to start small. Taxes on $12,880. When you take off the standard deduction, your taxable income is $330. Now, can I just say this is one of the most insulting parts about the IRS system? You're taking somebody who is poor, who is on the poverty line, and you're taxing them $330. Sure, that means that they're only going to pay a total of $33 in taxes. But the problem becomes that they have to pay 6.2% in FICA for $837. They have to pay 1.45% in Medicare for $186. So by the time you are done taxing this person at the poverty line, their take-home pay is $11,823. They've paid a total of 8.2% in taxes before they pay sales tax, state tax, real estate tax if they can even own property. You've literally taxed somebody back into poverty. When we look at the taxes on $31,000, we say that this is the magic number. The standard deduction remaining $12,550 would mean a person earning $31,000 would be accountable to $18,650 in taxable income. That would put them at a tax rate of 6.54%. They would pay $2,000 in taxes. Plus, they would have their 6.2% in FICA for $2,000. They would have their 1.45% in Medicare for $452. And by the time you add all this up, their take-home pay is down to $26,681. They're paying 14.48% in taxes. So you're saying that you need to pay $15 an hour so that people can have a living wage because you target $31,000. But because you haven't adjusted the tax scale, you've taxed that person back to $26,000 already. Is $15 an hour going to solve your problem? Let's not even, and I can do another video if you guys want me to, about how a federal minimum wage is a dumb idea anyway, because cost of living in 50 different states and 20 different cities in each of those states is going to be different. But we're still talking about taxing the poor. What if the government actually owned this problem? So what would happen if the government actually set the poverty line to $31,200? I mean, because that's what you're doing by saying a $15 minimum wage. So my challenge for our politicians is to become statesmen and actually take a stand and do this. Say, we're going to make the poverty line $31,000 in America. The IRS standard deduction will always be the poverty line because you've said it's the poverty line. So how are you expecting them to live on less than the poverty line? What if the government were to pay the first $2,028 of FICA and the first $452 of Medicare for each earner? Each earner. I don't care if they're rich and I don't care if they're poor, because the rich are already going to pay their fair share of taxes. And maybe, just maybe, by the government taking a stand and saying we're going to do our part in taking care of Americans, then you open the door for being able to tax businesses and billionaires better, because there's not going to be as much resistance when the government is doing their part first. Why should we worry about this? Because you are immediately going to put $1,056 into the pockets of those living in poverty. It's going to take years and years and years for our Congress to figure out a way to pay people $15 a minimum wage. If they would just fix this, you would give the poor an extra $1,000 a year. This would also put up to $4,519 back to people living under your new poverty line, because you keep trying to say that $15 is the living wage. You keep trying to drive that poverty line up to that 31,000 number. This will have given people 9 to 14.4% of their money back. And you've done this without hurting the small businesses who can't afford to do a minimum wage of $15. Now, if you guys don't understand why small businesses can't do a $15 minimum wage, leave a comment below. I will break down a tangible example showing you how these secondary and tertiary effects happen when you raise the minimum wage. You start an accordion push, and eventually what's going to happen is prices are going to rise, rent is going to go up, and pretty soon $15 an hour hasn't fixed the problem because you've made everything cost more. Now, I know this is one of the things that I dive into all the time on my show. I am more than happy to try to explain my points and my views. I wanted to put this one into the library so when somebody says, hey, I'm not quite clear and I don't have time to do this one live on the show, I can just say, hey, here's a video on it. You can go watch that and then come back to me. I would really appreciate it if people would share this one around. I think we're living in a society in America where our politicians are corrupt, lifelong politicians making less than $300,000 a year, suddenly having multiple $1 million homes, many multiple $1 million homes. I think that the problem is they're trying to pass off the buck to the 650 billionaires, but those people aren't 100% of the employers. And I think mainstream media is responsible for making the poor hate the rich, instead of the poor looking at the government and saying, why don't you do your part first? With that said, if you enjoyed the background music today, I do own my own record label. It's down there in the corner and in the description below. Do me a favor and subscribe to that YouTube channel so we can get it monetized, so I can keep paying Fiverr artists. And until then, guys, leave lots of comments on this one. Ask as many questions as you have. I would love to spend some time talking about my views on the minimum wage, but how we can get the boot off people's back before we start reaching into everybody's wallet to have higher taxes. You guys take care, and I will see you next time when we have something to talk about.